brothers, sisters? Are we reincarnated into different races? Now, first of all, the idea of race that we hold, most of us hold, is false. It does not exist. Two white people are just as likely to be genetically different to a greater or lesser degree as a white person and a black person. Race, as we think of it, is highly nationalistic and highly based on external appearance, which has very little to do with genes. A small variation compared to other genes that are unseen. The idea of race, it's a societal tool to help us figure out what class we're in, because we always live in a class system, and this is a problem in humanity. We've developed these different ideas of class and who's above somebody else and what a black person usually is or what a white person usually is. And the idea that, everybody should remain separate, should remain with their people. That is based on ignorance that has built up over centuries and centuries and centuries. It wasn't always like this. But in recent centuries, racism has become very nationalistic. Now, the idea of a folk spirit. Now, this is an idea in Asatru. An idea of people who follow the old gods in the Northern European tradition, myself included. I mean, I'm a fourth Mexican, but I'm 3/4 white, a fourth British Viking, basically, but a mixture of white besides that. But the idea of a folk spirit, and it's called a folk spirit in Asatru, and people who follow the Northern tradition, it doesn't make any sense when you break it down. So the idea of a folk spirit is every people, every kind of people, every culture having their own folk spirit that they have to get in touch with, and basically relegates them to being reincarnated into that same kind of people that is associated with a particular folk spirit, the folk spirit of a people. This idea of reincarnation doesn't make any sense because as people mix more and more and more, the idea of a folk spirit as well becomes obsolete. So if somebody is half black and half white, do they get to choose that folk spirit? Is it imposed upon them? How does that work? Nobody's come up with a very specific answer that can answer this question. And when you break it down even further, why are there different folk spirits? What is the purpose of it? Is the purpose of a folk spirit just to keep people separate? How do these folk spirits exist? Do they exist on the astral plane in groups? All these different consciousnesses that are in folk spirits. Do they share consciousness with one another but don't have interactions with other folk spirits? There's a lot of questions that when you truly break down the idea of a folk spirit, which even we find it in Native American cultures. We find some Native American cultures. We find it in Vodou, and not all Vodouissants subscribe to the idea of folk spirit. They don't call it folk spirit, but the idea of the African spirit, kind of like a folk spirit, allowing Africans to become Africans even in a single family after reincarnation. It's very isolating. It's very derogatory to the nature of the soul, because the soul is more than just skin color. It's more than ethnicity. And if we narrow it down to certain genes, if we confine the soul to genetics, then we're really missing the point. Genetics is not as spiritual as people make it out to be, especially nowadays when we've uncovered so many genomes. People have hopped on the train of genetics. Those who want to use genetics to justify the idea of folk spirits, of people being different. It's all about division for them. Now, this can be, many different kinds of group of people. It's not just white people. It's not just black people. Many different kinds of people. I've encountered Hindus who say, if you're not born Hindu, then you can't be a Hindu. I've encountered Asatwar who say that if you aren't born mostly white or full white, you can't look up to the Northern European gods. I've encountered Vodouissants and practitioners of Vodou who say that if you don't have African blood, you simply can't practice Vodou. You aren't a part of that lineage. You aren't a part of the purely African lineage, which is actually false because Vodou is comprised of many different cultures. Taino Indians in Haiti, for instance. I'm talking about the Haitian version, Vodou. The Taino Indians, Native Haitians, I guess you could say. When the Spanish first got to Haiti, they encountered natives and they worked them to death and then brought over African slaves to fill the slots of forced labor, and some of the Taino Indians still survived, and we have evidence that shows that their Taino Indians basically made veves in the sand on the beaches in order to call upon their spirits. And when I say Indians, I'm using a very generalistic term. The proper term is natives. But anyway, now, people who hold on to who they think that they are, they do it because it's hard for them to conceptualize something other than what they are now. It's hard for people to say, okay, maybe I can come back as somebody who looks different, who's born into a different culture, different religion, a different ideology, political, born into a different people in general. It's hard for people to think that, okay, everything that I love about myself now just won't be in another life. And the next point I want to make is very tied into this. The soul and its journey are not confined to one group. How would the soul learn? What is the purpose of everything? So, if you take in the idea of folk spirits, so what is the purpose of having individual folk spirits? Is it always for them to remain separate? What is the purpose of the soul's journey to be tied to a single family line, to be tied to a single kind of people? The soul's journey is obviously hampered if we buy into this idea that people are just reincarnated into people that are like them. Whereas internal existence seems to be thrown out the window when it comes to this. A black person, a white person, a Mexican person with the same temperament, the same interests can be far more similar than two people with the same heredity. And in modern times, we're starting to see more and more people say, okay, well, I am not different just because I have this culture. I'm not different just because I have this very small genetic difference, which other genetic differences between two people of the same people are much bigger most of the time. Now, this is where me being Hindu comes in. I am Hindu. I've chosen to be Hindu after studying all the major religions and many spiritual systems. Hinduism does not confine one to a particular code of conduct, does not confine one to a particular book. Hinduism is a belief that it's hard to narrow it down to one belief. You can be an atheist, you can be an agnostic Hindu, you can be a Hindu that believes in many gods as being part of one god, or just a Hindu that just believes in one god and looks up to one form of God. Whatever you like. There aren't a set of rules. And despite what some Hindus say, very few that I've encountered, it's not based on being born Hindu. That doesn't make any sense. The fabric of reality in Hinduism is Dharma. Dharma isn't about justice, it says in one interpretation of the Mahabharata. It is about empathy and growth. It isn't about getting people back. It's about letting everybody learn to realize who they truly are within, at their deepest parts of themselves. And it's about trying to show people how our actions affect others. Not necessarily by direct karma, like if you kill somebody, you're going to be killed in the same way, though that definitely happens a lot in karma from what I understand from my research. It is about allowing the soul to learn. And how can we truly learn if our soul is confined to a particular kind of people, to a particular ethnicity, to a particular culture? Existence becomes confined. It becomes something that is stationary. It's basically forcing even the spirits and the gods and the Loa into boxes where they are stationary. They don't evolve. They don't grow. They don't become anything else. They're forced into these we place the very gods themselves, people who believe this, into boxes. When you think about just having particular folk spirits or one people being confined to a folk spirit, to say that the gods and the spirits and the Loa, for instance, don't move forward, don't expect different things from us as we move on as a humanity, and don't realize that we're mixing and that more people are being called to more gods and more spirits now because the spirits and gods themselves are connecting in ways they haven't recently anyway, because time is cyclical. But they are connecting in ways because they are evolving just as we are. And the cycles of time and existence are something we can call yugas. Traditionally, Yuga is anywhere between 250,000 to 350,000 years, but I also, like Paramasa Yogananda said, I believe that yogas are also, there's many yugas within every yuga. So we're talking about millions of years of human growth just for humanity, let alone all the other planets, and let alone the astral realm, which was so much vaster than all the material universes. But anyway, without getting into that, in fact, I do not believe that a soul can gain permanent stature in the astral realm to where it'll keep on moving up into the causal realm and finally becoming one with the source eventually after who knows how long. If it feels it is attached to a particular skin color, a particular bloodline. I don't think that astral progress can happen that way. It doesn't make any sense. So, I will have probably angered a lot of people who watch this, whether you be somebody who believes in the folk idea of folk spirit of white people or black people, and I call it folk spirit. Only Asatwar will call it folk spirit, but same idea in other cultures. I probably will have angered plenty of people who want to hold on to what they look like and the idea that they are fighting for their gods, and they always will. They'll never fight for any other gods or spirits because they'll stay in the one folk spirit. But then, where's the progress? But anyway, are these my words just pride before the gods? Are they just hubris, which may invoke the goddess Nemesis? Perhaps, but I think not. If you believe as I believe, if you see as I see, if you feel as I feel, then come and see, brothers and sisters. Let's have this conversation together. Let's be united. Let's be one. And let me explain what I have written behind me. I declare this to be the temple of the one soul. In the hearts of all those who believe in humanity's inevitable and literal, at this moment, combined soul, we have the temple of the one in our hearts. You have two choices. Choosing to make your heart the temple of the one. The idea of one soul, and everything being the clothes of that one soul. Or you can create a temple of division in your heart. And choose division. Choose to just stand up for your particular kind of people or group. What temple will you choose to create in your heart? A temple of division or a temple of the one? Thank you very much for watching, and I hope all of you have a great day.